Yes, let's start with headline number one. So the first headline has us talking about the first letter to shareholders from new Amazon CEO Andy Jassy. So in the letter, Jassy said that Amazon will strive to create safer working environments for employees, increase their efforts toward reducing their carbon footprint, and there are a lot of additional company growth strategies and more. Chris, this was a lengthy letter. What were your takeaways from the first letter to shareholders from the first new CEO?
Yeah, and I feel like this letter to the shareholder thing is taking on its own life, just so you know. Like it's kind of like, it kind of gives me that kind of creepy feeling, like ooh, the letter to the shareholder, you know, like. But anyway, I had two main takeaways. I think first he devoted ample time to one-day shipping, which I thought was really interesting, saying, quote, "We'd made the decision to invest billions of incremental dollars over several years to deliver an increasing number of Prime shipments in one day. This initiative was slowed by challenges of the pandemic, but we've since resumed our focus here," end quote. I find that particularly striking because it basically says that Amazon's putting a stake in the ground on one day versus 30-minute or less or instant or whatever you want to call it. And they're also subtly saying that it's hard, that it requires a lot of expense, a lot of infrastructure to do, even for Amazon, which calls to mind questions about the economics of instant delivery. So that was my point number one.
Okay.
Point number two is what he says at the end, where he talks about innovation. And again, I'm going to quote him. He said, quote, "Albert Einstein is sometimes credited with describing compound interest as the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. We think of iterative innovation in much the same way. Iterative innovation creates magic for customers," end quote. When I first read that quote, Ann, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But then I got thinking about it and I'm like, I don't know that I jive with that anymore. Like it raised a lot of questions in my head because it's counter to what Bezos used to say about swing for the fences. And when I hear the word iterative, I think of incremental versus like that step change approach, which is what they did with things like Kindle, what they did with things like Go. And so when I think he's out there saying iterative, I think that there's more to it than that. There's more nuance to the conversation there, where I agree it's an iteration of what was before in a consumer experience, but it's a step change iteration. And so when you're trying to compare it to compound interest, I just don't personally like that analogy. So it also makes me wonder if they're stepping back a little bit or starting to step back a little bit from just walk out. Like, did we go too fast with that? Are we curious about that? I don't really know what to make of it, but those are my takeaways here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I thought a few things upon reading this. The question about speed, like he was talking about speed, not just in relation to same day delivery, but speed was like a theme throughout. I mean, the whole letter he's talking about, we're going to be first to market. Like that's what we build our teams on. Like we are number one going to be first to market. And I guess for me, I'm really curious if any company can be like Amazon. I don't know. I just kept thinking the whole time.
Like if their infrastructural investment is just too great to overcome.
I just don't know. Like there's no other retailers that have the money to put towards running projects this way. And their teams, you can't just go into a legacy retailer right now, or any retailer for that matter, even new up and coming retailers, and start working the way that they're doing. Like it's like the people that we give a little bit of a hard time to, who start new companies, who are founding new companies and creating these billion-dollar D2C brands, but their parents also were like invented Velcro. I mean, it's just like you just
start on third base.
Yeah. Like, so I guess for me, it was just like setting in the background, just like, especially when he's talking about AWS to start, and like the chips and all of the 40% increase in the amount of compute power that chip is creating. And now they've got another one. Like, it's just like, there's no way that anybody can catch up. So I was not paying attention to the shareholder part of it. I was just thinking of like what Amazon means in the greater retail environment.
I think that's a really great point, because the other tone I would take from reading it was that, like, okay, we're at a new phase of Amazon in terms of where it is as a company. Like, it's so big now. Yes, it did great in the past, but where are we going in the future? And the iterative idea just really kind of bothered me, where it's like, hey, now we're just going to focus on making things a little bit better,
right? Which
is very different than what they've ever said. So I don't know. It's something to watch here as they start to put things into market, especially to go after physical retail.
Yeah. And I think, I forget, somebody on LinkedIn pointed out too, but like, there's no talk of Amazon ad revenue in this whole letter. It's like, that was a huge miss, I think, if I'm a shareholder and I'm like, what about this giant source of revenue that's projected to grow even stronger in the next couple of years?
Still being coy. And these letters are so funny. They're like there's just like such ego strokes too at the end of the day, like how great we are. But anyway,